Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good morning so far. I am super excited to be on here to get our Solana workshop started out. I just dropped the check-in link in the chat, but today we have some friends over from Solana who are going to teach you about getting started with the Solana environment. I know we've had a ton of excitement already this week about how to get started on the blockchain, how to get started on the Solana playground. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Jacob, who is going to be walking you through all of this today and getting you started with Solana.
Sure.
All right. Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Creech. I work as developer relations at Solana Foundation, and I'm more than happy to start out with what Solana is and how it works, and what blockchain opportunities there are for developers, especially if you're a student. All right, cool. I will just get started.
I will leave you to it.
Cool. So I'm going to share my screen and show a presentation. There we go. All right, cool. So Solana. Solana is a blockchain. And what is a blockchain? Let's go over that. So blockchains really are slow databases. So if you're kind of familiar with like Postgres or Aurora or something similar to that, like MongoDB, it's just like blockchain, just a database. It has entries, it has places for data to be stored, and it's just really slow. However, it is has some good capabilities that are very unique to blockchains that databases don't have. So really, as a blockchain, it's impossible for it to be as performance, scalable, or cheaper than, say, your normal PostgreSDB. So why do we care about these slow databases? So while blockchains are slow, they have things called like decentralization. They're not owned by a single entity. So say you have a database that has information about, let's say, ownership of goods on a video game. Say you're playing Counter-Strike or something, and you own a gun in that video game. That gun could be something on the blockchain, and it wouldn't be controlled by just Steam. It would be decentralized by many, so that anybody could do things with that entity, the digital item of the gun. There's digital sovereignty. So you have that special skin for the gun on Counter-Strike. You could truly own it. So like if you do it with Steam or some kind of video game and you own an item in that video game, you don't really own it. If that game ever goes offline, there goes the item. And you can never actually use it. It's just like with blockchains, you can actually truly own that item and have full control of like, hey, I have this, I can do what I want with it. Immutability and transparency, that's a big deal with blockchains. You can see the full history of all actions on chain, and it's actually very easy to track it. So say you're sending this digital item from a video game to people, you can track fully through the blockchain, like, okay, I traded it to this person, they traded it to this person. You can see the full list and history of trades full transparently on the blockchain, and it's composable. So you have that digital item from your video game, you could actually use it in multiple games. So say, for example, you have Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2, and they both have an item in there, like, I don't know, a hat. You can actually use them in multiple games and be able to access them all via the blockchain. You can do this in games that are not owned by the same entity. You can use this in multiple places. And Solana specifically is designed to maximize the composability part of blockchains, to allow applications to build on top of other people's applications on the blockchain and kind of like build. They're kind of, we consider them like Legos. So you build Legos together to build a better tower or something. Cool. So let's evaluate why you'd want to use a blockchain, because a lot of the times, like you'll see, especially with all the hype with blockchains, like, hey, what is actually useful to use a blockchain for? Like, is it useful to use it for payments? And if you look at this and judge it based off of the characteristics that I mentioned in the previous slide, payments is a-okay. It can be used for censorship resistance. So what you can do is you can send money to anyone, anywhere, and it will basically be like, hey, I can send it. You're not going to have like PayPal stop me from sending it. Digital sovereignty, you actually own that money. Doesn't just, you know that it's real. You know that it is issued directly from whatever government that you have. Mutability and transparency, you can see where that money's come from. And then composability, you can then do stuff on top of that. That's a great example is payments. And gaming is also the example I've been using of like, hey, you can truly own that item for the digital sovereignty, and you can build a lot of things on top of that item with blockchains. So this is kind of like a framework to use like, hey, I have an idea. Should I use a blockchain for it, or should I just use some normal centralized database? And the more check marks you have on these characteristics, the more likelihood it is for you to have a good idea that would be a good use case for Web3 or blockchain. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of Solana. So Solana is awesome. Solana has a lot of contributors. So this right here is called Firedancer. And what that is like, it's a huge company, Jump, which is building an implementation of Solana as well as other companies. So it's big enough, Solana is big enough to basically get large companies building on top of Solana outside of just the original contributors. This is what's called Backpack. It kind of looks like an app store. It's to where like, hey, there's app stores and apps being built on top of Solana. This is called Seahorse, Seahorse language. What you can do is you can use Python to build programs on Solana. This is the Solana mobile. I have one right here. And what it is it's a phone that you can use to store your cryptocurrency on it, as well as interact with blockchain. One really cool thing about this is it has an app store that if you're building, like for example, if you're building an app for Google or Apple, Apple will take a 30% cut on every single transaction that users make on your app. This will take zero. It has an app store that it takes zero. It's very crypto friendly. It's very just developer friendly. So that's really cool. Super excited for this to come out to the masses. So this is what's considered like the Solana mobile stack. So there's tons of stuff that you can build with React Native, special mobile adapter, Kotlin, etc. for the mobile. So this is Metaplex. Metaplex has NFTs. People are creating millions and millions of NFTs seemingly every day. It's very cheap to do it on Solana. Very cool. So this is Solana Spaces. There's actually a store not run by Solana Foundation or Solana Labs. Someone built a store that has goods that are related to Solana in New York City, and it does fantastic. So to see like where we can build out on top of Solana or on blockchain, there's some key growth areas. So payments, as I mentioned, it's like, hey, with Apple, you just tap to pay. You can do the same thing with Solana, with their Solana phone. Social, there's a great examples of Chingari is like, hey, or even Twitter is like, hey, I have these tweets and I want to have a full like history of what has been going on Twitter. You can do that on the blockchain. DAOs. So DAOs are basically autonomous organizations. They're decentralized autonomous organizations that what you can do is you can take a group of people, to then basically pull their money together or vote on a specific thing to make actions. A great example is that there was a DAO, I think last year, it was called Constitution DAO, that it was a group of people that wanted to purchase a copy of the Constitution, or I guess, yeah, it was a copy of the Constitution. And by yourself or by a single entity in that group, none of them could have had the purchasing power to buy the Constitution. But there was enough people and enough money to where it was a possibility. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, or digital items. Um, what you can do with those is like, hey, I have a digital item. It has, so if you take an example of like tickets, you can have a ticket as a digital item and use that to get into like a basketball game or Coachella, or go see Snoop Dogg, and you can actually have like proof that you were there. DeFi, so this is decentralized finance. What that means is like, hey, can I interact with financial uh, basically tools on top of the blockchain? It's actually really cool. So what you can do, just to give an example, is that like, hey, normally whenever you want to lend money or borrow money, you have to do it through like a centralized entity like a bank, right? So you go to your bank, you talk to them, you say, I want to take a loan out for, I don't know, $1,000. They do a bunch of checks on you, and then they can lend out to you. And then the people that are lending to the bank or putting the deposits, the bank's taking like a cut on top of it. What's cool with DeFi is you could actually remove the bank out of the middleman, and you could lend directly to the borrower and just cut out the middleman. It's all handled by basically programs on top of the blockchain. And then finally, gaming is, as I've mentioned multiple times, is like, hey, gaming's a booming sector. Digital items are like huge on blockchain nowadays. You could do this with games. And if you look up like Solana Games Day, there was a ton of games going on Solana. There's a lot of really cool developments. It's fantastic. So this is the ecosystem of like companies building on Solana as of March 2022-ish. There's a lot more, and it's kind of hard to keep this updated now because there's just so much being built all the time. And what this means is like, hey, we're growing. There's huge opportunity, and what you could do is you could just like, you could go and contribute to any one of these and possibly get a job, or you could join the ecosystem, build your own company, add your own logo to this. It's like the possibilities are endless. And then this is kind of like, hey, there's a lot of blockchains out there. Why specifically Solana? And what makes Solana special? So there are a number of things that do make Solana special. These are things like, hey, proof of history. What is a clock before consensus? What it does is allows Solana to be super fast. Like what you do is you have 400 millisecond actions on the blockchain. Tower BFT, which is a optimized version of a consensus mechanism. How do I protect people from doing, or bad actors? How do I protect the blockchain from bad actors? Turbine, which is a way of propagating information to different people via the blockchain. There is sea level, which is parallel execution. So there's a lot of blockchains today. What they do is they do single threaded execution. So whenever an action comes in, it does single threaded execution, and that's it. Like you have to wait for each action to finish before your action is finalized. Solana does this parallelized, so it brings us into really the 21st century, so that you can very quickly create actions. And then finally, Gulfstream, which is kind of like mempool less transaction. So mempool is like, it's a big pool of transactions that people can pull from to execute. This Gulfstream allows it to be forwarded and be incredibly fast without a mempool. So I'm going to stop right there and see if there are any questions today. doesn't look like immediately. Cool. So Solana, there's a lot of things being built on it. But how do you actually build on Solana? What does it mean to build on Solana? So this is what you call Solana Playground. It's beta.solpg.io. What you can use this for is to very quickly get started and try out your first Solana program. So on my screen here, I have Hello World, and what it does is it basically will just print out Hello Solana on the blockchain. So if I want to quickly go through this and what it looks like, so this is basically what this is using is Rust. So this says, hey, use Anchor-Lang, which is a language in order to write on Solana, which uses Rust. This says initialize a program. This is the name of my program. This is like how you do super normally in like Java or something. And then here's a function. This is my hello function. And what it says is just like, hey, take in the context of hello and just return a result and print hello Solana. And then also print our program ID and execute fine. So what you can do is you can load up beta.solpg or Solana Playground and very quickly start building on Solana. It has all the tools to get started. It will set you up with a hello world, and you can just build here. It will just build very quickly. There's a warning because I'm not using a variable, but that's okay. And then this will usually say deploy. I've already deployed, so it's upgrading. And what I can do is I can just use this to upgrade the program or deploy the program directly onto the blockchain. It makes it very easy to get started with Solana, try it out, build on top. All right. So are there any questions on Solana? Looks like okay, actually, I don't know what is Solana. So Solana, maybe you missed the beginning of the stream, but Solana is a blockchain that's highly performant that allows you to do actions that are basically cannot be stopped. They considered like censorship resistant. So that's what it is. And then as I went through the presentation, I kind of explained through what blockchains were. They're slow databases that have special characteristics that allow you to do pretty cool stuff. Any other questions? Okay. Difference between Ethereum and Solana. Okay, so Ethereum, what they call is the Ethereum virtual machine. Ethereum virtual machine or EVM, they use something called Solidity in order to develop smart contracts. And what smart contracts are basically programs on top of the blockchain that allow you to do very specific actions. And they're called contracts because they basically tell you like, hey, this is the instruction. If I try to call it, it'll do this specific logic every single time. And so Ethereum uses a language called Solidity, which is very specific to Ethereum. And Solana uses mostly a language called Rust. You can also write programs in Python. And actually, there's a current development of like writing programs in TypeScript as well on top of Solana. So that is one big difference. And then there's also some more differences. So Ethereum, I think I mentioned earlier, there's something called C-level in Solana. So Ethereum, what they have is they have single-threaded execution environment. So what does that mean? Say you send a transaction on Ethereum, and you just want to send, I don't know, send $1 to someone. So you're sending that transaction on Ethereum, you have to wait and basically in line of all the other transactions that are going on. Not only that, but there's also some fees that you have to pay if you want to basically cut the line or jump ahead in the line. So that's kind of like how Ethereum works. So I want to send that $1. I have to pay a fee for it. If I don't want to pay a ton of fees to jump the line, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for every single transaction ahead of me. And then Solana, the way that it works is like, hey, I want to send $1. They have a parallel execution environment, which they call sea level. And what I can do is, because there's no people updating that account or that person's wallet who I want to send $1 to, it will basically go parallel to all the other transactions. I won't have to wait for someone else to send $1 to someone else, or someone else to do an action on the blockchain or trade their item from some video game. I can just have it done and executed in parallel to all the other ones. So that's one large difference between Solana and Ethereum. There's a lot of other differences that I can really that I can talk about the differences all day. It's like there's a lot of pretty big differences between Solana and Ethereum, but those are like the big ones for application development. And then how long does it take to master Solana, and do we need any prior skill? So Solana, how long does it take to master Solana? So Solana has been around, like only been online since I think 2020 is what it is, like late 2020. And so it hasn't been around for too long. There are still people developing on Solana that are pretty good. So like you can already know that it's going to be less than 2 years to do what you want to do. But however, there are faster ways in order to develop and learn how to develop on Solana. There's something called, or there's a course called Build Space Core. I'll drop a link in our chat so that the organizer can get it to y'all. And what you can do is use Build Space to learn and take a course on Solana. And this is I believe, it's like a self-guided course, but it's something like 40 hours or something, so that you can go through it, learn. You could really, if you use it as a full-time job for a week, you can learn and be a pretty proficient Solana developer within a week using Build Space. Next question was, is Solana free to use? Solana is free to develop on and to build on, but if you want to deploy those programs to like the main, like what you call production, what they call as mainnet, yeah, it will cost a few, like it will cost some what tokens are called Sol on Solana to deploy, and those tokens can cost money. So it is free to develop on, to test out, but it will cost some amount of those tokens in order to deploy to the network. Okay, cool. What are NFTs? So NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're basically digital items that are on the blockchain. So what you can do is like, hey, I can say I own this item in a game, and if it's on the blockchain, it will basically be allowed, saying like, hey, I actually own it, and I can do tons of things with it that are outside of the game. So I can like trade it on a marketplace. And if you think of like how Steam does this today, say you own a game in CS:GO or Team Fortress 2, or own an item in that game, you trade it on the Steam marketplace. What you can do now with blockchain is like, hey, I own that item in the game, which is an NFT. I can do things on any marketplace. Anybody can build a marketplace for it. Anybody can trade it. And it kind of allows you to do cooler things with the item that you normally couldn't do in the confines of the game. So NFTs are really cool in that case. They kind of like prove that like, hey, I own this item, and you can build a lot of things around that digital item. I guess next question, are you a professional coder? I've been a developer for 6 years. I guess I'm on my 7th year before joining developer relations. As developer relations, I lead developer relations at Solana Foundation. I'm kind of like a half engineer, half relations person. So I do a bunch of engineering to where like, hey, I'm identifying problems. I'm building tools, I'm working with other engineers to fix issues or make it easier to build on Solana. And then I'm also working very closely with developers on Solana. So yes, I am a professional developer or engineer. Can we also make another Instagram on Solana? You totally could. So I believe there are some YouTube videos of people trying to do this. I don't know links for it, but they're like, you can follow their tutorials and it will basically go through like, how do you do Instagram on Solana, or how do I do Twitter on Solana? You can do all this. And in fact, Solana Instagram today has a Solana integration. You could basically mint NFTs through Instagram onto Solana. That all exists, I believe, today. So you can go check that out, really. All right, cool. And are there any other questions? Is Web3 slower than Web2? Yes. So at the beginning of the presentation, I kind of said like, hey, blockchains can never be as fast as like a traditional database. Your blockchain will never be as fast as your Postgres DB. However, what's cool about Solana specifically is you don't lose out on a lot of the knowledge or the skills that you have learned or gained through Web two. Like, for example, let's give it a great example. So Solana, what it does is as I mentioned, it's like basically a slow database. It has a bunch of information on it that it's updating every 400 milliseconds out on average, or that's the target time. And so it's updating incredibly fast. What you can do and what people have built out is a way to export that via Kafka or streams or something to like a PostgreSDB. So you're automatically updating a PostgreSDB with information from the Solana network just as fast. And then what you can do to build your application on Solana is you can just have your normal Web 2 end-to-end for Solana. You could have your PostgreSDB, which has all the account information from Solana being updated in real time. Then you have your microservice in the middle, like your Golang microservice or something that has an API built on top of the DB. And then you have your front end who interacts with that microservice, the Golang microservice, in order to read information from Solana. And this will be basically what you're normally used to in like Web 2 applications. And this is what exists on Solana. So that's something special about Solana. Solana is very it's built as a fast execution environment, but you can basically, when you're learning and building on top of Solana, you're not losing out on skills or learning non-transferable skills that would not be able to be transferred from, hey, my current Web3 job to a Web2 job out there or something. Like I'm not going to learn things that I can't go work at like Google and use. In fact, we had a conference called Breakpoint, and the head, I believe like the head of some head at Google was there, and he was talking about how Google uses Solana today, and how they are working to make it even faster. So like it's catching the attention of big companies like Google, and while it is slower, you can do a lot of stuff that are just like Web 2, like I mentioned, like PostgreSDB, microservice front end. That's your normal bread and butter for application development today in big tech. All right. And then what is the difference between deploying in Solana than any other platform? Are there any plus point as the same as the other? So deploying in Solana, what you can do is you can deploy the difference between deploying on Solana and other platforms. So basically, with Solana versus like Ethereum, let's just take those two platforms because EVM is a very wide and broad system. If you were to deploy a smart contract on Solana, you would have to pay fees, but you wouldn't have to like pay for all the different like priority fees to get ahead of people, things like that. That would cost usually more on Ethereum. Ethereum, it's really, they're both like button clicks. Like you kind of build you build your smart contract locally. It outputs like an executable, and Solidity, it's like a .so file, I believe, very similar to Rust as well. And then you just basically take that binary, that executable, and just send it off to the blockchain. It's like a button click. So they're both really the same, but what happens afterwards? So I've deployed to Solana or Ethereum. What happens afterwards is very important. So say I've deployed on Ethereum, there are a lot of ways that you can like gather events that are happening on Ethereum, but it's very slow to update. So Ethereum, I believe I think it's every 2 minutes, 2 or 5 minutes, to do like a block. So you like that's your basically your minimum time to do an action on Ethereum. There are other things that are being built on top of the Ethereum to make it faster, but they're not quite there yet. Um, so what you're doing is like, hey, I'm building an application on Ethereum and I've deployed it. The users won't ever be able to get what they're used to UX wise. They're not be able to see like how quick they make an action, basically wait for quite a while. They go grab a cup of coffee, they come back, they eat a snack or something, and they can then move on with their application development. Solana, you make an action and it happens like it's every 400 milliseconds. So what you can see is like, hey, I made an action as a user and it feels real time. It feels like any old application. It's just like I have a little bit more control of what my assets are doing. So that is a big difference between afterwards deploying, but deploying itself is just mostly a button click. It's simple enough, even like outside of blockchain, to where it's just a button click. And then, which is the best programming language to build Web3 applications? So, best programming language. There's a lot of different programming languages that you can learn to build applications on Web3. So in Solana, in general in Web3, if you want to just build like a front end, it's what you know, TypeScript, JavaScript, HTML. It's like what you're used to. So it's like what you're just using that you're learning skills that are used across like the tech industry. You're building that. Then if you're building program side, like smart contracts on top of the, the blockchain, it depends. It changes per blockchain you're working on. So Ethereum, they use a language that's specific to Ethereum called Solidity. And this Solidity can't be like, if you learn Solidity, it's not transferable knowledge to working at Google or Meta or Apple. It's very specific to Ethereum. On Solana, you could learn Rust, which is often one of the most popular languages, or voted the most popular languages on Stack Overflow. You can use Python, which is very popular. I think everybody uses Python to build very scrappy things, to test things and build proof of concepts and then move on. You can use TypeScript to build programs. That's a little bit more experimental right now, but it's being built out. At some point soon, you'll be able to use Golang to write programs on top of Solana. I know someone that's building that out, and Golang is seemingly like one of the most popular languages to build like backends on today. Whenever I know some people working at GitHub or Microsoft, they use Golang on their backend systems. Very popular. You can use a language called Move, which is more up and coming, but Move is very special. It has its own VM. It's built by a bunch of people that worked at Facebook or Meta. So yeah, there's a lot more, basically a lot more different uh, different programming languages that you can use to build the smart contracts on Solana than other blockchains. Cool. Web3 is a hoax, and many people are skeptical about decentralization. So I will say that, like, hey, like, I wouldn't say it's a hoax. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with it. It just depends on what you want to do. There's a lot of people that, like, if they're not following the kind of like the characteristics that I showed at the beginning of the presentation, they don't really know. They don't, they're trying to come up with a product idea and they're just saying blockchain is for this, but it doesn't always fit. So there could be good things, there could be bad things. There's a lot of really cool applications that you can build, like payment systems or games on top of it, or like financial systems to where you can lend directly to the borrower. So there are really cool applications that you can build on top of blockchain. Cool. Any other questions? All right. If there are no more questions, this has been great. I've very much enjoyed teaching y'all a little bit about like what blockchain space looks like, what Solana is, and like what do you need to know in order to build on top of Web3 or on Solana. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jacob. As you can see, my camera is working again. Thank you so much for such an informative session and for everyone for all of your wonderful questions. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and stick around because we have some more content coming at you. But definitely make sure to check out the Solana challenges that are happening all throughout the week. And we also have another workshop for you tomorrow. So make sure you check that out as well. All right, y'all. Have a good day.
Very cool. Bye.